Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Win for Peace webinar on UN Security Council Resolution 1540, a very important topic that we will discuss today. And before we start, as usual, let me tell you more about who is Win for Peace, what we do, who are our members, what are our activities. So let me share with you a short presentation on that. So, as I've said, today we have our webinar, 2026 webinar number 3 on UN Security Council Resolution 1540, what it is and what it means for the prevention of the proliferation of weapons for mass destruction. As I've said, let me briefly introduce to you Win for Peace. Win for Peace is one of the almost 15 groups of expertise within the Win Global family. Our objectives are to contribute towards world peace through the involvement of more women, in particular in the areas of nuclear non-proliferation, safeguards, export controls, and disarmament. How do we do this? We conduct coordinated activities across all 4 domains, in particular education and training. And we currently have about 30 members from 4 continents. I'm the present leader of Win for Peace, and together with me during this webinar is my co-leader, Miss Agostina Serrano Betancourt, who will also be moderating today's session. Here are some photos of some of our members. So they are from all 4 continents, from all over the world. And we also have 2 supporters. One is the Vienna Center for Disarmament and Non-Proliferation, and the second one is the UN Office for Disarmament Affairs. Both are based in Vienna and are, as I said, supporting us. So what do we do as Win for Peace? We conduct several events like educational webinars. We sometimes, if we have the opportunity, we also do hybrid events. And all our events are announced on social media, in particular Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram, and by email to our different chapters and also to those who have participated before. All our events are open to everyone, and you are most welcome to subscribe and participate. What have we covered in the past? When we started off Win for Peace in 2023, we looked at what are the basics of the nuclear non-proliferation regime. We looked at national, regional, and international safeguards, the basics of nuclear export controls, Iran's nuclear program at that time, and something very relevant for today, the AQ Khan network, which was actually the trigger of UN Security Council Resolution 1540. And we covered nuclear disarmament. We also looked at nuclear propulsion, in particular the AUKUS project, how nuclear weapons work, what are the basics of the nuclear fuel cycle, some of the nuclear weapons-free zones, nuclear physics basics, and details of the CTBT and the TPNW. In 2025, we looked at some of the equipment that the IAEA is using, novel equipment for its verification activities. Some members from Cameroon gave us a presentation on how safeguards are implemented in Cameroon, which is an SQP state with an additional protocol in force. Former colleagues of mine from the UAE spoke to us about how the UAE transitioned from a SQP to a full-scope safeguards state. We also looked at work-life balance and communication skills. Very interesting was also a decommissioning project currently going on in the Chalk River laboratories in Canada. And we looked at voices of diplomacy across 2 generations. This year we have covered nuclear disarmament again, We looked at the outcome of the NPT review conference that was concluded at the end of May 2026, and this is now UN Security Council Resolution 1540. All our webinars are recorded, and we upload them to our YouTube channel, and here is the link to our YouTube channel. And you can also, I encourage you follow us on LinkedIn and on Facebook and Instagram. Then you will always be informed about our webinars and can directly register for the webinars. So that's my presentation. Before I introduce our moderator, let me share my own experience briefly with you about UN Security Council Resolution 1540. So I was at the IAEA and we were just coming out from a meeting when we learned that about the 9/11 assault in New York and in Washington, D.C. And that's when the IAEA started to think more about not just physical security, but about nuclear security in general, and which triggered the establishment of a whole nuclear security division. And also in December 2003, I was involved in the open source investigation when it was discovered that Libya was trying to import nuclear weapons designs and a centrifuge program through the AQ Khan network, which triggered also a major IAEA investigation, and where we realized that AQ Khan had not only stolen the blueprints for centrifuges and used them in Pakistan, but he had developed this black market with stations in Malaysia, South Africa, Dubai, and many other places, which he then used to sell these designs to other countries. And without AQ Khan, we would not have the DPRK having an enrichment program and Iran having an enrichment program. And Libya, that one was dismantled. So that was a really big trigger for UN Security Council Resolution 1540. So before I continue, let me briefly introduce and welcome, first of all, welcome and introduce my dear moderator, Agostina Serrano Betancourt. As I said, she's also the co-leader of Win for Peace, and she serves as the head of a nuclear security and non-proliferation committee of Win Argentina. She specializes in nuclear export controls and international safeguards with over 10 years of experience in the non-proliferation policy division of the Argentine Nuclear Regulatory Authority, ARN. She has also undertaken specialized training in the nuclear field. She holds a bachelor's degree in political science and is currently completing a master's degree in international studies. So without further ado, let me hand over to my most efficient moderator, Agostina. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Eva. Thank you. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. And on behalf of Win for Peace, it's my pleasure to welcome you to today's webinar on UN Security Council Resolution 1540 and its role in preventing the non-proliferation of weapons of mass destruction. As many of you know, the resolution occupies a unique place within the international non-proliferation architectures, and today's webinar will provide us an opportunity to better understand the resolution, its implementation, and its continued relevance in an evolving security environment. I would like to encourage everyone to actively participate in today's session. Please feel free to submit your questions at any time using the Q&A function. We will collect them throughout the presentation and address as many as possible during the discussion session at the end. It is now my great pleasure to introduce our speaker, Mrs. Edith Valles. Edith is a doctor of veterinary medicine and holds a PhD in toxicology from the University of Buenos Aires, Argentina. She has an associate research at Argentina's Ministry of Defense for over 30 years, carrying out various activities related to the non-proliferation of chemical and biological weapons, including awareness-raising campaigns in academic and professional settings related to the risk related to the dual use of materials and technologies, chemical security, biosecurity, export control for sensitive materials, among others. She's a member of the Advisory Board on Education and Outreach of the Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons, is a qualified expert in the investigation of alleged use of chemical and biological weapons for the United Nations, and from April 2018 to March 2023 was a member of the group of experts supporting the UN Security Council committee established pursuant the Resolution 1540. She currently serves as project manager for the Disarmament and Non-Proliferation on Weapons of Mass Destruction section at the Inter-American Committee Against Terrorism of the Organization of American States. Edith, thank you very much for being with us today. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Agostina, for your introduction. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are joining from. And basically, I would like to thank the organizers for inviting me to participate in such a relevant forum. Over the 30 minutes or so, I will talk about UN Security Council Resolution 1540, which is a landmark resolution in the non-proliferation of weapons of mass destruction, especially in relation to non-state actors. I will join my screen. Can you, let me share it properly. Can you see it?
Yes, perfect.
Okay, great. Thank you. To begin with, I would like to take you back to the early 2000s and look at what was happening at that time in relation to WMD's proliferation and terrorism. Abdul Qadir Khan, or AQ Khan, was a Pakistani nuclear physicist and metallurgical engineer. He's often referred as the father of Pakistan's atomic weapon program. Beyond that, he built a transnational commercial network involving engineers, intermediaries, workshops, shipping companies, front companies, and procurement agents across several jurisdictions. This network sold or transferred centrifuge designs, components, and enrichment-related expertise to countries such as Iran, Libya, and North Korea. At the same time, the 9/11 attacks changed the way states understood proliferation risks. Before 9/11, WMD proliferation was mainly seen as a problem linked to states and treaty compliance. After 9/11, the central concern became the possibility that terrorists or other non-state actors could acquire WMD materials, technology, or expertise. The AQCAN network gave that fear a concrete mechanism. 9/11 showed the intent and catastrophic ambition of non-state actors. CAN showed that sensitive WMD-related technology could move through private cross-border networks. Together, they created a new security logic. It was no longer enough to monitor formal state nuclear programs. Every state also had to control its own territory, companies, exports, financial channels, and criminal laws to ensure that private actors could support WMD proliferation. That is why the Security Council treated the issue as a threat to international peace and security, rather than only a treaty compliance matter. In simple terms, 9/11 created the urgency, while the AQCAN network showed the vulnerability. The attacks made policymakers fear that non-state actors might seek weapons of mass destruction. The CAN case demonstrated that the global market already contained pathways through which nuclear knowledge and equipment could be supplied illicitly. UN Security Council Resolution 1540 was there not only a reaction to terrorism, nor only a reaction to CAN. It was a response to the convergence of the two: terrorist ambition combined with privatized proliferation capacity. On April 28, 2004, the Security Council unanimously adopted Resolution 1540. It's a binding instrument that addresses the threat posed by non-state actors, including terrorists, acquiring weapons of mass destruction, their means of delivery, or related materials. The resolution has been reaffirmed by subsequent resolutions. The most recent resolution, 2663, adopted in 2022, which reaffirmed the obligations under Resolution 1540 and extended the mandate of the 1540 Committee for another 10 years. Resolution 1540 complements relevant multilateral treaties and agreements. What does that mean in practice? It means that it's not enough for states to say, we comply with NPT, the Chemical Weapons Convention, or the Biological Weapons Convention, and that's all. Resolution 1540 includes obligations that are not fully covered by those instruments. Resolution 1540 was adopted acting under Chapter 7 of the Charter of the United Nations. This phrase is legally important. Chapter 7 is the section of the UN Charter that allows the Security Council to respond to threats to international peace and security. Because of this Chapter 7 basis, Resolution 1540 is different from a normal political declaration. The Security Council was not simply encouraging states to improve export controls or criminalize WND-related trafficking. It was created mandatory legal duties for all UN member states. The Council was effectively saying that because WND proliferation to non-state actors is a global security threat, every state must close legal and regulatory gaps within its own jurisdiction. This was controversial at the time and still is. Traditionally, treaties such as the NPT, the Chemical Weapons, or the Biological Weapons Convention create obligations only for states that join them. Resolution 1540, by contrast, used the Security Council Chapter 7 authority to impose general obligations on all UN member states at once. This reflected the post-9/11 security environment and the shock caused by the AQ-CAN network. The Security Council concluded that waiting for a slow treaty making was not enough when private networks could exploit weak national laws and global supply chains. This image shows Resolution 1540 at the meeting point between two major legal frameworks: international counterterrorism law and international non-proliferation law. On one side, after 9/11, the Security Council became increasingly concerned that terrorist groups and other non-state actors could seek weapons of mass destruction, as I said. On the other side, the existing non-proliferation regime was mainly designed to regulate states and formal weapons programs. Resolution 1540 connects these two areas by requiring every state to prevent non-state actors from gaining access to weapons of mass destruction, in that sense. So, in a very practical sense, Resolution 1540 fills the gap between fighting terrorism and preventing WND proliferation. It turns both concerns into a binding global security obligation. The slide shows the different conventions and treaties related to the implementation of Resolution 1540. On the left, or at least my left, you can see the counterterrorism conventions. On the right, you can see the treaties related to the non-proliferation of weapons of mass destruction. All these conventions and treaties appear in the 1540 matrix, which I will explain later. You may also notice that one treaty is missing, the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons, or TPNW. As you know, not all UN Security Council members agree with this treaty. That is why it's not included in the matrix template. So why does Resolution 1540 matters? First, it matters because it focuses on non-state actors. As I mentioned earlier, many existing treaties and regimes were designed around states. They assume that states are the main actors with the intention and capacity to develop weapons of mass destruction, but as you know, they are not the only ones. Second, Resolution 1540 matters because it refers to means of delivery. These are not usually covered in the same way by legally binding instruments. International controls on means of delivery often rely on politically binding export controls guidelines, such as those developed by the Missile Technology Control Regime, or MTCR. Countries then implement those guidelines through national export control regulations. Third, Resolution 1540 addresses areas such as financial measures, security, accounting, physical protection of related materials, border controls, export controls, and enforcement. These areas are not fully covered by the NPT, the CWC, neither the BWC. Before going further, I would like to show you the definitions created by the Security Council for the purpose of implementing this resolution. First, means of delivery are defined as missiles, rockets, and other unmanned systems capable of delivering nuclear, chemical, or biological weapons, and specifically designed for such use. Non-state actors is defined as an individual or entity not acting under the lawful authority of any state when conducting activities that fall within the scope of the resolution. And finally, related materials are defined as materials, equipment, and technology covered by relevant multilateral treaties and arrangements, or included on national control lists, which could be used for the design, development, production, or use of nuclear, chemical, and biological weapons and their means of delivery. Although Resolution 1540 has 12 operative paragraphs, the main obligations for member states are set out in the first three. The first operative paragraph reflects a political and legal commitment by states not to support non-state actors that attempt to acquire or use weapons of mass destruction. The second operative paragraph requires states to adopt and enforce laws prohibiting certain activities by non-state actors. And the third operative paragraph requires states to establish and enforce effective domestic controls. I will go through each of these in a little more detail. The first operative paragraph says that all states shall refrain from providing any form of support to non-state actors that attempt to develop, acquire, manufacture, possess, transport, transfer, or use nuclear, chemical, or biological weapons and their means of delivery. This is a very broad obligation. It covers direct and indirect form of support and places responsibility on states to ensure that they are not helping, enabling, or tolerating these activities. States support these obligations by joining and implementing relevant international instruments, such as the Geneva Protocol, the NPT, the BWC, the CWC, and eight of the 19 international conventions on terrorism-related matters. These instruments help create a broader legal foundation for the implementation of Resolution 1540. The second operative paragraph requires member states, in accordance with their national procedures, to adopt and enforce appropriate and effective laws prohibiting non-state actors from manufacturing, acquiring, possessing, developing, transporting, transferring, or using nuclear, chemical, or biological weapons under means of delivery, especially for terrorist purposes. It also requires states to prohibit attempts to engage in these activities, participation as an accomplice, assistance, and financing. This is where domestic criminal law becomes especially important. Resolution 1540 is not only about international commitments. It also requires states to translate those commitments into national laws that can actually be enforced. Sorry. The third operative paragraph is divided into 4 subparagraphs. It requires states to adopt and enforce effective measures to establish national controls. Subparagraphs A and B focus on accounting for and securing related materials during production, use, storage, or transport. They also refer to the physical protection of nuclear, chemical, and biological related materials. Subparagraph C and D deal with border controls, law enforcement measures against illicit trafficking and brokering, export controls, transit and transshipment, re-export, financing, transport services, end-user controls, and appropriate criminal or civil penalties for those violations. In other words, Resolution 1540 requires states to build a full national control system. It is not enough to prohibit an activity on paper. States must also have the institutions, procedures, and enforcement tools needed to prevent and respond to proliferation risks. There are other operative paragraphs in the resolution that are also important. For example, the resolution highlights the importance of control lists, even though it does not make them mandatory in the same way as the core obligations. Operative paragraph 8 encourages states to strengthen and universalize non-proliferation treaties and to cooperate with the industry and the public to support legal compliance. Operative paragraph 10 calls on states to cooperate consistent with national and international law to prevent illicit trafficking in weapons of mass destruction, their means of delivery, and related materials. The 1540 Committee is a subsidiary body of the Security Council. It is composed of the current 15 members of the Council. At present, the chair is His Excellency Eloy Alfaro de Alba, Ambassador and Permanent Representative of Panama to the United Nations. The committee's work is supported by a group of experts. Originally, the group had 9 experts. Currently, it has 6. I was a member of the group of experts, as Agostina said, from 2018 to 2023, representing the GRULAC region. It is important to clarify that the 1540 Committee is not a sanction committee. Its role is to support and monitor how UN member states implement Resolution 1540. It does not impose sanctions. Instead, it follows a cooperative approach with member states. The committee's mandate and scope came from Resolution 1540 and subsequent resolutions. Its work is organized through 4 working groups that you can see the names in the bottom of the screen, which are national implementation, assistance, cooperation, and transparency and outreach. These working groups are coordinated by committee members, and the work of the group of experts is organized in the same way. This slide shows the 1540 Committee Toolkit, the one that that the committee uses to assist states and to check how the resolution is implemented around the world. The first tool is national reports. The committee encourages states to submit them because they allow states to explain what they have done so far to implement Resolution 1540. These reports give the committee an initial picture of a country's laws, controls, and institutions. The second tool is are the matrices. Matrices work like a checklist. It helps the committee organize information and identify in a practical way where a country is doing well and where they may still be gaps. The third tool is the National Action Plan. This is where states move from reporting to planning. A National Action Plan sets out what still needs to be done, who is responsible, and what steps the state intends to take. Actually, for example, from the OAS, we are assisting states in developing these national action plans because actually they are super useful for them in the way that they could improve the implementation of the resolution at national level. Finally, dialogue with states is also essential. The committee does not simply review documents from a distance. It can engage directly with governments, understand their challenges, and discuss what kind of support may be useful. Finally, the sharing of good practices allows states to learn from one another. For example, when one country finds an effective way to improve export controls, border security, or industry outreach, that experience may help other states face similar challenges. They share them with the committee, which publishes those good practices in their website. If you let me do this, I will share with you how the 1540 committee website looks. Because if you are interested in this subject, actually this website offers you a lot of materials to check. First of all, in this tab, you can find all the resolutions, right? In all official UN languages. Here you have how general information about the committee, how is composed, the group of experts, and briefings, and details about committee meetings, etc. The National Implementation tab is super important because there you will find all the information regarding national reports. For example, if you open it up, you will see all the national reports that states have submitted. Some of them are quite old, but some states regularly update those reports, and these reports are super important for the group of experts to conduct the review of the implementation of the resolution around the world, and I will talk about that later. And also you will see here the national action plans that the different states already submitted. And if you get into, and also you can see the detail of those national action plans of those states that already submitted them. You will see the national point of contacts and the experience is shared, as I said before, that is also, this is super valuable for states, as I said before, because states share what they've done to deal with a specific related topic in terms of 1540 implementation and something that really worked, so they share it with the international community. And here, this tab is related to assistance because the 1540 committee offers assistance, but assistance, the 1540 committee, I will try to make myself clearer, offers assistance itself. For example, if a state requests assistance to develop a national action plan, for example, or if they would like some assistance or guidance in reporting. But in terms of technical assistance, the 1540 committee can't provide that type of assistance, so they rely on in different organizations and even states that offer assistance, right? So they put in contact the state that is requesting the assistance with the entity that's is offering the technical assistance, and in that sense, the country can improve how it is improving the implementation of the resolution. In terms of cooperation, that this is the third group, this group deals specifically with the relation between the committee and the different international organizations and bodies. And the transparency and outreach, of course, I mean, it's self-explanatory because this group deals how the committee shows itself to the international community. And here you will have a lot of information about. And in this tab, you will see the different reports that the 1540 produced. And in this section, you will see also the last report that was conducted for the comprehensive review, that it was from 2022. So let's come back to the presentation. And now let's talk about the comprehensive review, because every 5 years, the 1540 committee conducts a comprehensive review of the implementation of Resolution 1540. For this process, the group of experts review the matrices. Oh, sorry, I didn't show you the matrices. That it was something super important because you will understand the matrices. Current template. Because this is the way that the committee organizes the information about the implementation of the different countries, the 193 states. So in OP1, as I said, through compliance of OP1, states show commitment in terms of non-proliferation of weapons of mass destruction in relation to non-state actors. So in this part of the matrix, you will see the different treaties related to even terrorism or non-proliferation of WMDs. And here, in every state, this is also, as you can see, is blank because it doesn't belong to any particular state. You will see when each treaty was ratified or signed or ratified, if it's not ratified, and so on and so forth. In OP2, you will see that in this section of the matrix will contain all the legislation that is related to national legislation which prohibits persons or entities to engage in one of the following activities: manufacturing, acquiring, possessing, developing, etc., etc. So you will see that you have the different weapons. Here you will see that the specific law that makes reference to, for example, a prohibition to manufacturing chemical or biological or whatever weapons. And in this section, you will see that the specific law or decree or whatever that makes reference to the enforcement of those violations, or expressing, for example, penalties and things like that. In OP3 A and B is related to measures to establish domestic controls to prevent the proliferation of nuclear, chemical, and biological weapons. And it's the same thing. In these sections, in these cells, you will see the different regulations that states will have in terms of measures to account for production, use, storage, in relation to the different weapons, and how it is enforced. This is related to continuing with OP3 A and B. as you can see, here is general information in terms of nuclear weapons, the different, for example, treaties or agreements that the country already signed. In terms of chemical weapons, is the same thing, and biological weapons. As you know, biological weapons related measures are the ones that are less implemented, less regulated, and that's why it's less detailed here in the matrix as well, because, I mean, and also when the resolution was created, it was nuclear oriented, right? And they added the chemical and biological weapons. But the main purpose, the international community was really worried about regulating all things related to nuclear weapons. But they say, but there are two other weapons of mass destruction, and they added them. And finally, here you have the OP3, C, and D, where they have everything related to export control, border control, and so forth and so forth, and so on and so forth. And here you will see all the regulations that are covering all those matters. So I'm coming back to the presentation. And here, that is why, sorry, because I was kind of messy, but this is something that happened after the group of experts revised all the matrices of 193 states, and they come up after 2022 with these results. Because when they analyzed this, they found that 56% of all the measures were complied, right? When they took all the measures that I showed you for each of each matrix of each state. And 56% of all those measures were complied, compared to the 50% of the measures that were complied in 2016. By the end of next year, you will see here another column that will compare what happened in 2021, 2022 to what you will see in 2027. So experts rely on the national reports, right? But as if you check later in the website, you will see that not always you will find all the reports and updated reports of the 193 states. So experts, what they do is to check national gazettes of the different states, or, for example, different websites that belong to organizations that they might have legal databases, or, for example, statements that could be delivered, that had been delivered during international meetings, that they provide information about the implementation of the resolution. So it's a hard work in order to try to update all those matrices. And this chart shows a clear improvement in 2016 and 2021. But actually, perhaps it won't be statistically significant. But Africa, Asia, Pacific, and GRULAC all made some progress, while Eastern Europe and Western Europe were already at higher levels of implementation. That is from the regional point of view, right? Overall, the trend is positive. Implementation is moving in the right direction. However, the pace remains uneven across regions. The group of experts is now conducting the next matrix review, and the results should be shared with the international community next year. The year before I left the group of experts in 2022, the Security Council renewed the mandate through Resolution 2663. Sorry, there is a mistake here. In summary, this resolution reiterates the decision and requirements set out in Resolution 1540. It extends the mandate of the 1540 committee for 10 years. It also confirms that committee will continue to conduct comprehensive reviews of implementation. Resolution 2663 encourages states that have already submitted reports to provide additional information on their implementation. It also encourages states to prepare national action plans on a voluntary basis and submit them to the 1540 committee. The resolution also emphasizes the importance of dialogue and interaction between the committee and member states. It encourages member states to share their experiences, lessons learned, and good practices related to the implementation of Resolution 1540. To conclude, there are a few points I would like to point out. First, Resolution 1540 is a legally binding instrument that establishes obligations for all UN member states. Second, it focuses on non-state actors, weapons of mass destruction, related materials, and means of delivery. Third, states must consider not only the obligations contained in relevant international instruments, but also specific obligations set out in Resolution 1540 in order to meet their international commitments. In terms of global implementation trends, there has been a modest increase in implementation compared with the results of the previous comprehensive review in 2016. However, much work still remains to be done. And coming back to the beginning of my presentation, the disturbing point for the Security Council was not simply that Pakistan's most famous nuclear scientists had violated export control norms. The real concern was that the AQCAN network had used ordinary features of globalization: private suppliers, dual-use goods, weak custom controls, offshore companies, and fragmented national laws to move highly sensitive nuclear technology. In other words, CAN demonstrated that a determined non-state actor could operate almost like a private nuclear supply cartel. The lesson from the AQCAN network is that proliferation can take place through ordinary commercial channels and across several jurisdictions. The lesson from 9/11 is that non-state actors may have the intention to cause catastrophic harm. Resolution 1540 brings these two concerns together. It requires every state to play its part in closing the gaps that non-state actors could exploit. That is why implementation is not only a legal obligation, it is also a practical contribution to international peace and security. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Edith, for your clear presentation. And before we move to Q&A session, I would like to make one brief remark for those of us working in the nuclear field. As you heard, the UN Security Resolution complements rather than replaces the existing nuclear non-proliferation architecture built around the NPT, as we know, the IAEA safeguards, the NSG, and the Standard Committee. While those instruments were primarily designed to govern relations among states, as Edith explained it, the resolution filled an important gap by establishing legally binding obligations for all UN member states to prevent non-state actors from acquiring weapons of mass destruction. So for those of us involved in nuclear export control, safeguards, and nuclear security, this is a particularly important takeaway. The resolution reminds us that effective non-proliferation depends not only on international commitments, but also on robust national implementation throughout export control, enforcement, border controls, and of course, close cooperation with industry. So before we open the floor for questions, I would just like to echo Edith's recommendation to explore the official security resolution website. I've just shared the link in the chat so you can explore it. I will especially encourage you to visit the section on national implementation, which contains a wealth of practical resources, including states' national reports and voluntary national implementation action plans. So whether you are a policymaker, a regulator, a researcher, I believe you will find these resources very valuable. So we have questions already. The first one I know that you already reviewed the obligations and so on, but one of the questions is who are considered non-state actors under the resolution? Because we talk a lot about non-state actors, but one of the questions of our assistants is who are considered non-state actors?
Well, I mean, that is a good question because, well, as you already seen, the Security Council defines it, right? But non-state actors, apart from terrorists, are cartels, for example, criminal organizations, and are the bad guys, right? But anything that are not part of the states are non-state actors. We are not, I mean, a bank, a university that doesn't belong to the state, anything that don't belong to the state are non-state actors. But of course, Resolution 1540 is not focused on that. Resolution 1540 is focused on the bad guys. The bad guys that usually are terrorists, are gangsters, are criminals, are people that belong to cartels, and those ones that could have different objectives. Like, for example, terrorists might have an ideological objective. Gangsters might have an economic objective. Like, for example, AQ Khan. Perhaps AQ Khan, it wasn't a terrorist. The guy, it was a business for him. So, but he was proliferating. In his business, he was proliferating. So those are basically the non-state actors that the Resolution 1540 makes focus on. I hope I answered the question.
Okay, thank you, Edith. I believe you answer it. So I have another one. The resolution establishes obligation for state, but as we saw today, its effective implementation depends on the active involvement of many stakeholders beyond government. So in your opinion, how important are outreach and sustained engagement with the industry and the academia to raise awareness, build a culture of compliance, and ultimately ensure the successful implementation of the resolution?
I mean, it's super important. Outreach and engagement of the civil society is super important. But the thing is, we have to be aware about something. Resolution 1540 is not something critical for states because it's not a priority. We have to be clear about this. Weapons of mass destruction are usually not a priority for states because they have another priorities, whether, I mean, climate change or I don't know, they have problems, health problems, political problems, religious problems, social problems. And at the back of the list, the WMDs are coming. So we have to be aware about that. So when I was part of the group of experts, I remember myself talking about the importance of implementing this resolution and wanted to engage all the stakeholders that I could do. But as much as I did that, I recognized that it was really difficult to engage them because, as I said, states have many other priorities compared to Resolution 1540. But even that, we need to keep going, and we need to keep raising awareness about this, because we know that the risk is there. Even though many states don't see it, we know that risks are there, and that's why we need to keep going in raising awareness about the importance of having this kind of controls in order for non-state actors to get access to technology, to materials, and things like that. I don't know if I answered the question.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much, Edith. I have another one, and it's something we talk about in different webinars. We are addressing this issue since last year, is emergent technologies.
Oh, yeah.
So as emergent technologies continue to evolve, including additive manufacturing, artificial intelligence, advanced manufacturing techniques, do you think the implementation of the resolution will need to evolve as well?
For sure, for sure. As you know, all international instruments that try to oversee different subjects, they are super behind of how the technology is evolving. Even though Resolution 1540 was updated in 2022, it refers to emerging technologies, but also it refers something like states should be aware that the importance of overseeing emerging technologies with that kind of wishy-washy knowledge as language, but not that specific, because also it's difficult. It's super difficult to oversee them. We already know that. We know how developed countries are struggling to oversee, for example, AI. Even though they already issued different regulations about AI, still is super difficult to regulate it. And that is for developed countries. Imagine that this resolution must be complied by 193 states all around the world. So coming back to your question, for sure, this should be regulated, but to be honest, it's super difficult to do it.
Okay, well, thank you. Thank you for your answer. We have another questions related to the obligations that the resolution places on UN member states, rather than revisiting all of them, because you already talked about that. Could you perhaps highlight the one that you consider most critical for the effective implementation of the resolution, or explain it why?
Yeah. I would refer, because many of the states, when in terms of having legislation that prohibits non-state actors, for example, to use, manufacture, etc., those obligations, usually states have them in their penal codes, even though, for example, they don't have a specific norm related to non-proliferation of WNDs. They have certain obligations included in the penal code or in certain laws. But I think that the main problem is with the internal controls, the obligations in terms of OP3A, B, C, and D, because these are the ones that are less implemented, at least when we consider the last comprehensive review. These are the less implemented. For example, everything related to physical security of the related materials, the accounting for and securing all those related materials. And in terms of nuclear security, those materials, states usually, when they have those materials, usually they secure them, they account for them, but it's not the same thing with the chemical materials, and even less the biological materials. And in terms of the other controls included in this OP3, that is the ones that related to C and D, the export controls and border controls, transshipment controls, and user controls, those are super important to be in place in order to prevent the proliferation of WNDs, because, as I said before, non-state actors take advantage of the places where there are weak controls, right? To take those places as targets and acquire those materials. So for me, I think that a key point in terms of the implementation of this resolution is having internal controls. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Eva, I don't know if you want to join us some of the question. Edith, I don't know if you could
I am
see in the
here.
chat
I
if you
just
want to take another one.
yeah, I'm here. I just put off my image in case it has an influence on the quality of the
Okay.
image. So I've also worked a lot with, first of all, a big thank you to Edith for her presentation. That was really very interesting to hear this big overview, and also how UN Security Council resolution is implemented. I have also worked in bits and pieces. So when I was in the UAE, I worked on filling out those matrices for the UAE, also some of the implementation measures like the legal framework and stuff. And as I said, from the IAEA's point of view, at the very early stages of how this all came about. So I feel deeply connected with this. And I think it's a really important resolution. So if all states adhere to the provisions, then that would just increase everybody's security on this planet. My question to you, Edith, is since you worked on the committee or within the committee, can you tell us a little bit more about the work of the committee and the practical work? And also, I think there is no enforcement mechanism in the resolution, right? So there's no sanctions against states that ignore it or something like that. So I would like to know, how do you encourage states to comply with the resolution, which is still not always uniform and worldwide?
Well,
Thank you.
thank you for your question, and it's a tough one. Well, I mean, usually I don't know nowadays because sometimes the committee's work sometimes change a little bit depending on the chair. So, but even though the formalities are always followed, but sometimes the chair shows what their preferences. Usually there are meetings, formal meetings and informal meetings, and the committee assign tasks to the GOE, and the GOE should work. They have to work on those tasks. Apart from the GOE to attend meetings that they are invited, or even, for example, with the support of the UNODA, they organize meetings. Most of them, for example, to raise awareness about the implementation of the resolution. They organize trainings, POC trainings, because the POCs are hallmarks for the implementation of this resolution, because they are the ones who are in contact with the 1540 committee and the rest of the organizations at national level. So what the committee does in terms of raising awareness, well, as I said, they attend meetings when they are invited, related to the different technologies. Every meeting that the group of experts, for example, attend, they should be authorized by the committee. Once those invitations are authorized, the group of experts can attend. And there they show what the committee does. They show the resolutions, and also usually the committee offers assistance to improve the level of implementation of the resolution, because many states around the world, they need assistance because you already saw that the resolution is super complex. It covers many technologies, many things that for the majority of the states around the world is super difficult to implement. So that's why the 1540 committee offers assistance for the states to strengthen the implementation of the resolution. I don't know if I answer your question.
Yes, thank you, Edith. I know it's not easy, and what do you do to encourage states to follow the resolution? That is really a challenge.
Yeah,
And also, a lot of states don't even have the infrastructure and the manpower that is needed, and you need to work across sectors, across different sectors
exactly.
to
Exactly.
work on
And also
implementation.
and also, as I said before, we have to consider that Resolution 1540 is not a priority for many states.
Exactly.
So that is something that we have to ponder when we analyze the whole situation.
Yeah. Actually, I encourage everybody to check out the 1540 committee website. It's really very comprehensive. It, as Agostina and Edith have said, it contains a lot of useful information. And you may also, if you have questions, I think it's really a page to go to. I'm just looking at it here. It really has everything you need to know about it. So, and there are also NGOs that look at the implementation of this important resolution and who then classify states according to how they implement the resolution in terms of export controls, not only nuclear but also chemical, biological. For example, ISIS does this job. They issue the peddling peril index, which uses a lot of information from those matrices. So.
And also you have to consider that because of the Security Council or the committee's restrictions, if you check the assistance donors, you won't find NGOs. The committee just only relies on international organizations and states to provide assistance. That is something that restricts the quantity of and the quality of the assistance that can be offered. But that is something that, I mean, the members of the committee establishes in that way. So,
Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, well, we have one more question, and it's linked with your last comments on the question Eva made. And it's when implementing national legislation, what opportunities exist for the private sector beyond government to contribute, particularly through the development of ICPs, internal compliance programs, and the classification of control items?
Well, I mean, ICPs are fundamental for everything related to the internal control of materials. But that, I mean, the involvement of the private sector is crucial in the implementation of Resolution 1540. But the private sector can involve themselves. They must be invited to participate. And that is, it's up to the states how they implement the resolution. That is something that the 1540 committee makes so much emphasis on that. The 1540 committee, I mean, the 1540 resolution establishes many obligations, but it doesn't say how to do it. So I mean, you can't, being part of the UN, now that I'm in the OAS, I usually give advice to states how to do this and how to do that. But being part of the UN, I couldn't do that. But if you want the private sector to be involved, it should be invited by the state to be involved. Otherwise, they can't participate in the process. But ICPs are crucial for the implementation of regulations and controlling materials, nuclear, chemical, and biological materials.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. And we have a last comment regarding an anecdote that I believe refers to Oppenheimer. And his point the point was that relying solely on inspection or detection is not enough. And that is precisely why the Resolution 5040 emphasizes preventive measures such as export controls on physical protection and effective national implementation to stop proliferation before sensitive materials or technologies can reach non-state actors. So if you have to add anything to that, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, prevention is crucial. I mean, the problem is that at least I'm mostly aware about what's going on in the GRULAC region. In the GRULAC region, prevention is something that we don't like it because it's like it's not important. We prefer to react instead of preventing. And that is the huge problem. Because if you have all those measures in place, it will help you a lot. Because prevention is key in proliferation, in non-proliferation of weapons of mass destruction, and in many other arenas.
Okay, so, thank you. Thank you very much. I don't know, Eva, if you have a final remark or something to say.
No, I'm just looking at another comment by Sebnem Udum about her article. So I will check that out because that looks really interesting, the article that you published about the historical and legal linkage. So thank you for sharing that. There is no time to look at that now, and I will read it in more peace. But in general, I can just see another question. No, I think they have all been.
No, we addressed all the questions, I
Okay,
believe.
good.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I think we are coming to an end of our webinar. If there are no more questions, I would like to express my deep appreciation to Miss Edith Valles for finding the time to talk to us today. I think this was a very important subject, and we really appreciated all your insights and experiences and sharing all your knowledge. And I would also like to appreciate the moderation of Agostina, who did it very professionally. She's also an expert in this field. So you could see that these two ladies really fused very well today. And last not least, I would like to thank to all our participants. For those who could not participate today, the recording will be made available. But thank you very much. And please, let's continue making this world a safe place for everyone. I think we need that to happen. And amongst others, by following the provisions of UN Security Council Resolution 1540. Okay, so thank you very much, everyone. I wish you a nice end of the day or day ahead of you. And I hope to see you again next time in our next webinar, where we will talk about how to create regulations. So I hope I have aroused your interest.
Thank you, Eva, and thank you,
Thank you
Edith.
very much. Have a nice day ahead.
To be with us today. So thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.